Hello, welcome to Dissident Canada. My name is Tyler. Yet again, I will be talking about civil strife in America and where that likely eventually ends, and there is no end in sight as of yet. But to be fair, what I'm talking about applies mostly to the West, not just America. It's just what's happening in America is being broadcast across the world in a more televised way. It's not the suppression isn't the same. Like you've had, you know, in the context of say what's going on with trans Tifa and the increase of violence, not just what happened to Charlie Kirk. Do I believe the official narrative? No, but I sure as heck don't believe the Israel narrative because it doesn't have their fingerprints on it. Like, let's say this was the Charlie Kirk assassination was in fact a Israeli op, all right? That means it's most likely done by Mossad. That's not how Mossad operates, all right? If you go look at their confirmed kills, they let you know that, hey, we did this. We struck this guy and got away with it. We were out clean. You didn't even know who. That's how Mossad operates, all right? And has always operated. Because of the way Israel came about and how Mossad was brought into existence. That's what they do with their attacks. They haven't come out and claimed credit. So the likelihood that they had any involvement is nil. On the other hand, if you compare what happened to Charlie Kirk with Malcolm X, once you understand Discord's likely involvement from the information that that is publicly available and isn't, the little wishy-washy stuff coming out of the FBI and from Discord themselves, you understand that what likely happened is similar to what happened to Gretchen Whitmer, and that it was a very much Malcolm X style thing of go find the crazies and give them a little wind up. But besides the point, because of media coverage of what happened to Charlie Kirk, we've had at least one contagion event that I've seen. That is the attack on ICE. I believe it was in Dallas. Maybe it was Fort Worth, Dallas Fort Worth area. I can't remember exactly, but that was copycat all over it. You've seen again an increase in the attacks on ICE themselves. This is politicized violence, and what is happening? You have not only mainstream media and big tech giving political cover for these people, giving the crazies who have been wound up, giving them the idea that, oh, no, this is totally acceptable. Go do it. We'll just keep pushing. You now have political figures also doing that. I believe it was the mayor of Minneapolis or the mayor of Portland. I can't remember. Also was like, yeah, no, we're gonna resist ICE, and they're bad guys. Blah blah blah. Donald Trump bad. Then you have Gavin Newsom signing into law that the ICE can't wear face coverings, which I'm actually on the side of Gavin on that. I don't like any police being able to obscure their face. But my reason is different because I don't trust the state whatsoever. So I want easily identifiable agents of the state so that if they should do something bad, you can easily identify them to then sue them through the context of civil lawsuits and hold them civilly responsible. Like, that is, I mean, there should also be criminal suits against certain federal agencies. I'm thinking in the context of, say, Waco, Ruby Ridge, and other instances where, say, the DEA has screwed up so royally. In one case, they chucked a flashbang into the wrong house on the right street, but they were years late. And in doing so, they permanently blinded a child, a little girl. They were not held civilly liable. They were not criminally prosecuted for a royal screw up because, again, they got the wrong house on the right street. Okay, so at least they're in the right area. But there were several doors down, and the house that they were supposed to raid, do a no knock raid, was known by the local PD to not be the drug producing house anymore because they had been the drug producers had moved like years ago, or like a year, something like that, 6 months to a year ago, and it was and the area was being gentrified. Royal cock up. But besides the point, like you have all these instances of what very much appears to be a civil war scenario in which you have parts of the of federal and state governments in the United States taking sides. Yes, it's in the federal government. You can see it with activist judges not ruling based on the law, but instead ruling on the fifis, because, the fifis count nowadays, specifically in the immigration context, but other contexts as well. Again, you had Gavin Newsom doing that, saying, "Hey, the feds can't do this," which is against the Constitution, from my understanding. Like the feds, the states can't tell the feds what to do, and like they're creating clashes in which the state is going to probably attempt to arrest federal agents, and that's not going to go down well. Like, you're setting up this scenario of state-fed conflict, but only between, again, the crazies who have lost the plot so long ago and who think the administrative state is the state instead of, the elected bureaucrat or the elected politicians who the power is vested in by the general state, by just democracy, having a democratized system in general. Sorry, my dog seems to be trying to lick the ever-living hell out of my feet at the moment. So, like, where do you see the end of this? Like, the big problem is you have, again, politicians advocating openly for violence. You have the same thing in a less extreme way happening in the mainstream media and big tech. And because Donald Trump didn't do as, I'm not going to, give myself credit saying, this is what you need to do, but I was saying it, when he got into office, is he needed to purge the ever-living hell out of the U.S. federal government so that he had 100% control of it, purged it of the operators who think, oh, well, I've been here for, a years, decade plus. I am the state. I am the power. I am the people. I decide, not you, the lowly elected. Like, you had to get rid of those people, completely purge it, so that you control the federal government, so that you can then attack the problem areas. Like, I was talking with my dad recently about this, and just so happens he was, like, flipping through the news. He was going through ABC and then ended up in Fox. And my comment while we were listening was, do you see what they are doing? They are actively advocating for seditious activity and running cover for seditious activity. They are literally, in the case of ABC, because they have one of those broadcast licenses given by the FCC so that they go over the airwaves. They needed to be held to account. They needed to be ripped the ever-living hell apart and hold to account, because this day has been coming for decades. You've had like 40 plus years of mainstream media not only lying, but creating political narratives that are nowhere near the truth and subverting the will of the people. And, this isn't a scenario in which I'm saying, these are my enemy, go find the crime. This is, these people are criminal. You don't really have to look too hard to find the crimes. Like in the context of what Fox News was saying at the time, while we were, having our discussion and watching, there was a Fox commentator just like saying, "Oh, hey, James Comey, the guy who committed numerous amounts of crimes, all right, in his storied history of working for the federal government. The one thing he's being indicted on, it's not that big of a deal. It's just perjury in front of Congress." And I'm like, what the hell do you mean? It's just perjury. He lied to the elected officials of the American people. He lied to the American people's elected representative. All right? In a fact-finding meeting with legal repercussions. And he was the former FBI director. That's not just, oh, he lied to the government. It's no big deal. He just told a white lie. No, that is a serious offense. Like in the context, all right, of what happened. If you go back, not in American history, but if you look in, say, European history, that equivalent is an offense where the government does not go, it's okay, it's just perjury. No, they go find a tree and a rope. I'm not advocating for that, but that's the historical context of what happened, of what, has happened in the past in similar situations of, lying to the people's representative. Now, typically in the context, it's the king, which completely different thing. But, you still had, after, say, the French Revolution, and you had elected governments show up, they would still do that stuff because it's a serious offense. And like here's the real problem. Like, big tech and big corporate media need to be ripped apart because they have been propagating this for, again, at least 10 years. Like, you can definitively say for 10 years they have been sowing discord with the intent of creating mass terror events that they would benefit from. Okay? Just look at the way they cover certain incidents. All right? Whether it's, the Charlie Kirk political assassination, or just what has become standard, which is obviously disgusting, but mass shooting events in America. Okay? They have been routinely told by researchers into contagion events and the FBI themselves that in the way you cover this stuff, you create contagion events. You cause more harm. You cause, in the context of mass shootings at schools, you cause more dead kids. You stand on dead kids and shout and glorify what happened, and then are shocked and surprised when you get copycats that you do the exact same process. Like, so with, now, say, certain amount of accountability being held to those in the deep state that haven't been held accountable, with the raid on John Bolton and now the indictment of James Comey, without control of here's probably the biggest problem with the administration. There's no cohesive narrative being really formed on what happened. All you have is Trump's marketing speak and, Levitt working off of how Trump speaks like that, and Bondi being Bondi and Cash and Bongino being highly untrustworthy at the time being. Okay? So you don't have this cohesive narrative being formed by Trump and his administration saying, hey, look, all right, we're going to be open and honest with you. This is what's going on. These people are actively being seditious in nature, all right? We have to treat it as such. We're not going to cross the thin line that we know is there, but these people need to be held to account. They have actively subverted the will of the people, which I think is the greatest crime you can commit in a democracy. Like, I mean, obviously there are worse things you can do, but in the context of criminal charges of sedition, actively, you know, violating the will of the people is like, it's the most extreme thing. Like, you can think of like fraud in the context from the government. Like, it's bad, all right, and it is defrauding the American people. Absolutely, that's horrible. But subverting the will of the people and creating the current political environment inside of America that is, again, as I stated earlier, not just limited to America. With the way the USAID operates, the way the NED operates, and other NGOs operate, this is a global operation that is not just limited to America. We saw this best in the regime change operation in 2020, also known by Black Lives Matter, the Summer of Love. It was not contained to America. It went places where it should never have been because the historical context for, say, racism is completely different. But again, look at Canada. It is not the Canadian context of racism is that against, however we want to say, the natives, the Indians, the Aboriginal peoples, the indigenous peoples, however the hell you want to say it, the tribes that were here when the European settlers landed, and the tribes that grew out of it, like, say, the Métis. That is where the historical racism is in Canada. Canada was the end goal of the Underground Railroad. Like, the pipeline of escaped slaves from the American South was to eventually end up in Canada so that, like, the Pinkertons couldn't return them. And yet we had massive Black Lives Matter protests in Canada. Why? Because of NGOs with government funding that were trying to effect regime change and prevent certain regimes from coming in. You can look at the historical racism in England, all right? It's, again, not so much against Black people. I mean, they had that, but that was limited mostly to Africa on the big side. Or, like, the racism was in other countries. It wasn't so much, hey, we're going to, import a whole massive amount of slaves and do that stuff on our shores. We're just going to facilitate it for a little bit. East India Company, Royal African Company, and then eventually they outlawed it. And, the British Navy was out there on the open seas trying to stop slavery. Okay? Like, the historical racism in the context of the UK is the Scots, the English, the Irish, the Welsh hating each other. Sometimes with good reason. Or, like, the different parts, the two different Irelands hating each other. Again, mostly to do with the British. But, like, it's that type of racism. Like, the Black Lives Matter protests, riots, however you want to say it, was based on historically American context. Not, it didn't, like, uniquely grow into, when it came over to Canada, it became a Canadian thing. And was like, yes, we will advocate for, the racism that happened to Native Americans. Something else went on after Black Lives Matter to then cause the whole, truth and reconciliation bullshit that's going on. And there seems to be a lot of misunderstanding being propagated, to say the least, about that. Um, but, like, if I get back to this whole thing, with the way the West is primed, where you've got typically two factions, right? You've got those who think Orange Man bad, and those who either look at it as, oh, no, he's not that bad. He's not bad. Or he's not that bad. Or like, really? You're mad at him? And not like the federal government? Like, there's basically those who accept the Orange Man bad narrative and those who don't. If that were to kick off in the United States and it goes, again, bigger and bigger, it's not going to be contained because it will be a global event. Because culture now, more or less in the West, is a global thing. It's like you still have unique cultural things in, say, Canada, UK, France, Germany, America. But predominantly, wherever you go in the world, especially in the West, you find predominantly American culture. It is a super culture. It dominates the globe. To the point where, again, if you look back in history, say in Iran, before the CIA got involved with the revolution, before, during, and after selling to the Ayatollah, by the way, weapons that should not have been sold to him, and other material aid, Iran was becoming very Americanized. Very interesting. And the extreme radicals, again, helped, in part, helped being, their creation is due to the CIA and other U.S. funded assets of their prominence, being there. Like, again, super culture. Like, if wherever it kicks off first, okay, I think it kicks off first in the United States because it's much easier to get a situation where the right will retaliate. And what I mean by that is, like, it's very easy to get a situation in the United States where the left does something, okay? I'd say, like, an event of some kind for right-wing people. And the right, someone on the right that's there exercises their Second Amendment rights to defend themselves. Like, that is a much easier thing to get done in America and have it then use your media assets and your big tech assets and spin that and get a larger event to happen. And it can spiral out of control very quickly than it is in, say, the UK, even though it is still the same situation will likely happen in the UK. It is, and it has happened in the UK in the last 2 years. Like, you've had situations where either the left or the left adjacent people in the UK, whether that be, like trans Tifa people or people associated with Islamist policies or politics, do something, and then, say, British lads react. We've seen that. I've reported on that. Okay? A few times. And but nothing bigger comes of it. It doesn't spiral out of control. America is very much unique because of the Second Amendment and the context of it, where, you can have a situation of a leftist mob descend upon, say, peaceful church-going folks, and those peaceful church-going folks are going to pull some once, it hits a legal threshold for them to do so, and then, it's open season type thing. But not, like, it wouldn't be open season. It would just be, hey, the bad guy doing bad things, or bad guys in certain contexts. Which leads me to, hey, that happened, like, for me the other day. It very much looks like, again, it's hard to tell at such an early stage if it was, say, Trans Tifa, an Islamist, or if it was something else. But, like, in the context, again, of the political climate in America, it kind of doesn't matter who did it. The fact that you had an attack at a church full of, right-leaning people, for most, like, that's likely who was there, or, highly likely to be Donald Trump supporters. Like, that's the situation. Or, here in Canada, we had last week or week and a half ago another church being burned down. Like, eventually, this is likely to kick off. You are seeing the acceleration very similar that you saw in, say, the 1970s and late 60s with, say, the Weather Underground and other organizations on the left committing acts of political violence, also known and defined by the FBI as terrorism. And I'm not exactly seeing, and this is my opinion, I don't see how you realistically deal with those elements in American society, whether they be government officials, NGO officials, or private citizens who appear to have been successfully brainwashed in a much more effective manner than MK Ultra could have ever hoped for. Like, I don't see how you get out of this without it ramping up. Now, will it become full-on civil war? I don't know, because there's no real dividing line. Like, it's not so much like, you look at the U.S. Civil War. It's very well defined. You had abolitionist states, you had slave states, and there was a dividing line, and those who, and you actually had Virginia become the Virginias, because West Virginia succeeded because they disagreed with the slave practices of Eastern Virginia. So, like, you really don't have that, because the country is effectively fairly well divided. In most states, like, sure, you have overrepresentation in certain states of urban liberals that gives them control of the state. But it's not like there's not a large percentage of right-leaning people in that state. Like, you don't have, zero right-leaning people in a state. Like, California is a great example. California has the largest amount of registered Republicans. Bigger than Texas. There are more Republicans in California than any other state. Now, that part of it is massive amount of population, but the fact that they didn't leave after all the things that California has done says something. Now, a lot of them are, or there's a decent amount, at least in the political echelons in California, who are anti-MAGA Republicans, so basically Democrats. The Kevin McCarthys of the world, so to speak. But again, if this fully kicks off, it's going to spiral into other countries. And, other foreign countries will absolutely take advantage of it. Like, China's been actively poking it with a stick on the internet, being like, "Come on, let's go, 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 go. We need you to spiral so that we have a chance of becoming the dominant world power. That we can become the world hegemon. Like that is what the Chinese communists want. They are likely not to get it, because what's happening in China is very reminiscent of late stage communism that we saw with, say, the Soviet Union and other communist countries that then back off and become eventually more democratic in nature and go more capitalist. But still severe domestic issues in China. So I'm not really worried about that kicking off. But yeah, like it's just it's not gonna be fun. Few years, like if you know the whole fourth turning theory is, it seems to bear weight. Like if that's true, we are in for some shit. Now it probably won't be, say, World War III. There's a lot of factors going against that, but who knows? There are some forces trying for some shit. Again, recently read an article of yet again of, hey, look, the Chinese military and Chinese Navy are ramping up efforts, and it looks like they're totally getting ready to invade Taiwan with an amphibious landing. And it's like, really? China's army and navy can't do basic drills worth a damn. They ain't ready for shit. The Chinese military, you gotta find some videos on the Chinese military. It's hilarious. Like, you will find that the military does so little military things that when they actually, say, go out into the field and do exercises and stuff, you will see that the Chinese soldiers come back with tan lines. And I'm not talking like, around here or whatever. I'm like, when they use your goggles for whatever, you will see tan lines for like, hey, just got standard goggles to keep mud and stuff out of your eyes. Whereas you compare that to, say, CAF members or, U.S. military personnel, they don't ever get those tan lines because they're constantly doing shit. Now, I know there's a lot of, will be like, oh, there's a lot of hurry up and wait stuff, but like they're regularly in the field, they're regularly outside doing stuff, so that you don't get those crazy tan lines of like, oh hey, put the goggles down and I have raccoon face going on. Like the Chinese military, I doubt could put down an insurrection inside of a small Chinese province. And when I say small, I'm thinking population size. Like they are incredibly hilarious to watch. I don't know if Chinese military propaganda is as funny as North Korean propaganda. Like when it comes to, hey, we're gonna shoot a video here of the Chinese military soldiers doing exercises and stuff versus the Koreans when they do that. I don't know which one's funnier. I lean towards the North Koreans because like they're on average, I think, 6 inches shorter? Maybe it's only 4 inches shorter than their South Korean counterparts, and that's due to malnutrition. So basically, you've got like the short Koreans coming at you that have, very little muscle mass. And to me, I think it would just end up like in a fight with a North Korean, very much like in a cartoon where you just stick your hand out and they run into your hand and they can't do anything. That's what their propaganda gives the impression of. The Chinese propaganda is slightly better, but it's still hilarious. Like, they own Hong Kong now. Why don't they just get a Hong Kong, you know, action producer to make some propaganda? At least it'd be cool. Anyways, that's my opinion on U.S. civil strife. I don't think it's going to calm down. I think it is very much going to ramp up. I think it will get worse and worse. I don't know if it will spiral out of control into full-on civil war conditions, but very much going to continue down the path of what happened in the 70s and 60s. And it kind of lasted into the 90s because, you know, you had Fed attacks routinely. Anyways, that's the video for today. Hope you had a good day, and I will see you tomorrow. Till then, have a good day again.